Phone Bhoot. Should you watch it in the theaters or can you watch it on OTT? I'll answer that at the end of this video, so stick around for that. But before we get to that, let's just talk a little about the movie. To give you context as to how this horror comedy pans out, there is a scene towards the end where there are a bunch of dead people, amongst whom is the dead groom from episode 1 of Mirzapur. Do you know why? Because the director of this movie also directed Mirzapur. And I think I'm the only person in the theater who spotted that despite the Mirzapur theme song playing in the background. That's the kind of comedy that this movie is. If you know your stuff, there's scope for you to enjoy it. If you don't know your stuff, you're just going to end up with a lot of jokes thrown at you, some of which land, some of which don't. Now, before we get to anything else, I have to talk about the narrator of this movie. The narrator is probably the funniest part of the movie because it is so meta. The narrator starts off by telling us that इस movie का हकीकत से कोई लेना देना नहीं है, with the poster of Hakikat in front of us. By the time we get to the interval or the Madhyantar, the narrator also tells you to bring your girlfriend some popcorn and be a nice boyfriend. And not just that, he ensures that while he's reading out his script, he also says the words evil laughter and then gets told off for it. Siddhant Chaturvedi, Ishaan Khatter and Katrina Kaif power through this entire movie. They too have wholly submitted to the madness of the script, and I think at some point during that they decided that they just wanted to contribute to it. So their conviction helps you not cringe out at some of even the flat jokes in this movie. Now a lot of people will say, why should we surrender to the movie the same way that they have? They're getting paid for it, whereas we have to pay for the tickets. I see your point, but let me just run through a quick list of reasons why you can probably surrender to this movie. And even though they may sound like spoilers, trust me they're not, because you will not believe what you're watching until you're actually watching it. During the climax, whether intentionally or unintentionally, they end up doing their own version of the endgame climax where a lot of dead people just come and somehow fight one bad evil force, except they just don't say on your left. Baba Sehgal has written the theme song of this movie, which plays towards the start of the movie and sets the tone for the jokes and the kind of movie that this is going to be. Not only do you get Jaggu Dada screaming Moshichi at some point in the movie, you also get Jaggu Dada jamming out to the hero theme song. And last but not the least, they've incorporated jokes like Astra hai to button to hoga hi, which is a clear joke directed at Brahmastra. Now, I would assume that this movie was done with most of its shooting before the release of Brahmastra, given that Brahmastra released barely 2 months ago in the theaters. So to go back, incorporate such jokes after the movie has been released, maybe dub it into the movie, just shows that they were actually dedicated to giving the best possible, most relevant pop culture jokes to the audience. The movie starts off with an homage to Krishna Cottage where through the shower blood falls onto Siddhant Chaturvedi's face. So yes, if you know your horror movies, especially your 90s, 80s B-grade horror films, you're going to have a lot to enjoy in this movie. It's full of Easter eggs. I don't know how to put it into words. I did not love it. Don't get me wrong. This was not a great movie by any means. Was it enjoyable? Yes, it was. And that is where it becomes tough for me because I actually enjoyed this movie much more than I did Bhool Bhulaiya. Another thing that I really did want to talk about was the marketing that they've done for this movie. They knew exactly what they were making. They were never saying that this movie was going to be the best horror comedy you've ever seen. They just promised that it was going to be stupid as shit and it was going to be enjoyable nonetheless. Which is why, even once the reviews were out, and they were not all positive, they've gone out and put up everything that they possibly can that even gives the slightest compliment to this movie on their Instagram pages. And I think that's extremely smart marketing. Another quick thought that I had, the set design was great. Despite the VFX not being good, the practical effects used in the movie were actually pretty commendable. So yeah, good one. If you're wondering why I'm talking about the practical effects being good, that's how you utilize your budget and don't blow it on horrible VFX. Even though there was some really bad VFX in this movie, it was kept to the minimum. A major reason as to why I think the general audience really did enjoy this movie, and it is clear since the success of Bhool Bhulaiya this year, is that people just want a good laugh. They want to leave their brains at home, as stupid as that sounds. They want to do it. They want to go have some popcorn, listen to some good songs, hear some good jokes, and leave the theater not thinking about anything else. They want escapism, and that is clear as day. Even though this movie may not do the same numbers that Bhool Bhulaiya did because of its star power or simply the name of the franchise that it belongs to. Personally, for me, it was far, far more enjoyable than Bhool Bhulaiya was. Now back to the question that I posed at the start. Should you watch it in the theaters? Not necessarily. If you have 2 hours to spare, you're getting a cheap ticket and you can go with a bunch of friends, go for it. But otherwise, wait for it to come on OTT and it'll probably still be just as enjoyable at home.